Thank you for coming. My name is Steven Seidenberg, and I'll be the chair of this slightly truncated panel. I've already said that I welcome interruptions and questions, and we have two young ladies with microphones, so if you want to say something or if you want to help guide the conversation, please jump in. Don't wait. There'll be a question and answer period at the end, but you don't have to wait until the end. If there's something you want to come in, come in. I'll introduce you just very briefly to my colleagues. Immediately on the left is Ken-ichi Imamura. Imamura-san is from NHK in Japan. And as you'll hear in the course of the morning, NHK is like the BBC. It has a long and proud tradition in making documentaries. It's been a big boy for a long period of time. It produces lots of documentary. Next to him is my colleague, Wei Chen. Ms. Chung and I actually work together in the same company in Beijing, and she is here representing specifically the private sector in China. And there is a private sector in China, but not a private, I won't anticipate. She's representing the private sector. We had intended to have a representative from CCTV, the state broadcaster, here, but they have pulled out for political reasons that have nothing to do with this panel, but have to do with other things. So as a result, Wei and I will also represent, you didn't know this, but we'll also represent the broadcast sector, which is the state sector in China. And I can certainly give you news hot off the press from China, since at this time yesterday I was still at the Shanghai Television Festival, and things are changing very rapidly in very interesting directions for co-productions. And then to the far left, in the empty chair, is Kenny Bae from KBS, the state broadcaster in South Korea. And from now on, I'm just going to say Korea, because the North Koreans don't co-produce for pretty obvious reasons. Although Kenny is unable to be here physically, he has sent us a short video to talk about co-production in Korea. And you will note that we have a distinct North Asian bias here. The big broadcasters in terms of documentary production are NHK, CCTV, and increasingly KBS. You can't call it a hub, but the North Asian nexus. We do not have anyone here from Southeast Asia, which is also a significant hub, but is smaller in population terms. So Singapore, Malaysia, increasingly the Philippines and Indonesia are also actively building their documentary sectors. Now, I notice Mark Eberly in the audience, and you're familiar with Southeast Asia. You're based in Cambodia, but you work in Indonesia. So if people want to push they have specific questions, or they want to push into all of Asia rather than North Asia, I'll invite Mark to come up here and sit at a microphone and take questions as well. So it really depends on what's useful for people here. The reason I am sitting here is because I've been in the business for 29 years, and my interest in Asia goes back to my undergraduate days, so it goes back way into the 1960s. I've made more than 30 films in Asia. The first film I made there was in 1985-86, and I was lucky enough to be part of the first ever Western film crew to be allowed into the autonomous region of China that they call Inner Mongolia. And just so you have a sense of scale of what we're talking about, Inner Mongolia is bigger than Western Europe. So when you talk about provinces in China, you're talking about pretty big places. Since then, I've worked both on original productions and on productions that were reversions of programs made by Asian filmmakers who wanted to reach a wider market. And I've worked for independents, including independent Asian production companies, of which there are lots. And for broadcasters, both European broadcasters seeking programming about Asia, but also Asian broadcasters, and also global broadcasters like the National Geographics and Discoveries of the world. So I've got pretty wide experience over the last couple decades. So I wanted to bring together people from the broadcasters and from the private sector in Asia to give an idea about what was or what is possible in terms of co-production. I assume you're all here because you looked in the catalog and you saw the title and you thought, gosh, producing with Asia, Elusive or Illusion, that sounds weird. What's this all about? It's a very interesting situation that as resources are shrinking in the West, resources for documentaries are shrinking in the West, they are increasing in the East. And I think we naively, when we started noticing this between 5 and 10 years ago, when we started noticing this, many of us in Europe thought that we could just grab the money out of Asia and put it into our production pots. And that's not happening. And there are reasons why that does not happen. And part of them are structural reasons, and part of them are cultural reasons, and part of them are content reasons. So I hope in the course of this morning, some of this information and some of the reasons will pop out. I think what I'd like to do is come to you, Ken-ichi. You're the most mature broadcaster in the room. Can you start by telling us a bit about yourself and a bit about NHK in general, and then let's move into NHK in terms specifically of co-production. Okay?
Okay. My name is Ken-ichi Imamura. It's very difficult to pronounce. Not Ken-ichi, Ken-ichi. My family call me Ken, so Ken is okay. And I'm sorry for my bad English. Sometimes I do not understand my own English, so maybe you can understand. Okay. Anyway, I was NHK producer since yesterday. I moved to NHK Enterprises yesterday, but I'm still an NHK producer, and I'm in charge of finding a good project for NHK slot. NHK started co-production more than 20 years ago, but at that time it was co-production between broadcasters and broadcasters. We worked with BBC or CCTV or France Télévisions, Arte. Basically, we worked directly with broadcasters. But when we started high-definition broadcasting, maybe more than 15 years ago, I don't remember exactly, but at that time, there was no HD project in this world. So we invest huge amount of budget to change it into HD. It was good time because we invested more than $100,000 to one project because it was very expensive to shoot in HD, but we did need HD project. But now the situation, economical situation in Japan is not good, and we changed the audience fee, and our budget is decreasing. So the budget is not huge. But 4 or 5 years ago, we started investing our money directly to foreign filmmakers. And at that time, I was in MICO, Media International Corporation, and I was a distributor. Basically, I worked in NHK, but at that time, I was a distributor for 4 years. And after that, 3 years ago, I came back to NHK. I became a commission editor, but I knew nothing about co-production. So Stephen taught me many things. And I was a commission editor, producer for the slot called World Documentary. It's the slot from Monday through Thursday, 4 times a week. And we acquired 100 foreign project documentaries, and I have the budget for co-production. We co-produce 20 projects every year. 1/3 is from Europe, 1/3 is from America, 1/3 is from Asia. And personally, as for the European project, I tried to choose the best of the best, including the project from the States. But as for Asian project, as a big broadcaster in Asia, I tried to help the young, emerging directors. So I invest money to the Planet of Snail, which got the award at IDFA last year at a very early stage. So I'm very happy that Min Chu and the director got the award. And also, it's not an Asian project, but a project about China. I invest money to China Heavyweight. It is screened here. It's a Canadian project, but the director is Chinese-Canadian. And I'm not a co-producer, but I can find my name at the last of the documentary, so I'm very proud of it. And also, I invest money for the 2 different projects about the Sichuan earthquake. Also, I have 4 or 5 different Asian projects. And also, I worked with Brook Lapping Productions. Maybe you know, very good, experienced production in London. And also, we love the project of WGBH, Frontline or Nova, but mainly acquisition, but sometimes we do co-production with them. And sometimes we invest money to a small project in Europe, like we helped the Serbian producer. My colleague found him at Sunnyside, but at that time he had no time, no money to buy the air ticket, so he drove the car from Serbia to Sunnyside. So anyway, as you know, maybe you might not know, but as I was a distributor, so NHK style is much different from the Western style. We narrate. We have used many narration. We use many map or chart, and we explain a lot because Japanese people want to know the information. So it's much different from cinema verite style. But world documentary is only for the documentary, which is much different from NHK style. So you have chance for world documentary. And basically, the appetite of the world documentary is, we want to know, because Japan is far east, so Japanese audience want to know the situation in the world, especially when particular place is having any change, we want to know. For example, the liberation of North Africa, or the economical crisis in Europe. So we want to know the change or transition of the society. Or we want to know how different the people are in the world. So we do take the human interest project as well. But as I am in NHK Enterprises, I can write a proposal to any slot in NHK. But these slots are for the Japanese audience, normal, usual Japanese audience. So as for the slot other than world documentary, we need a strong link to Japan or Asia. Or the style should be acceptable for Japanese audience.
Can you explain what that means? Give examples.
For example, we sometimes add narration for documentary because when many filmmakers love to make documentaries cinemability style, which means they don't have any narration. Sometimes we cannot understand the basic information, where it is, or what is the structure of the problem like that. So we add narration. But sometimes we have to change it or add something in between the documentary to let Japanese audience can understand. So I have to ask them to change it a little bit. Or sometimes we ask Japanese presenter to go to the place, and we ask you to shoot the place with him. So that this is not what I did in war documentary, but for other slot, we have to make it easy to understand for the normal, usual Japanese audience. And also, for example, I found a good project about the e-waste. It's about many European people are, sending the old refrigerator or the many electric things to, throw it away in Ghana. So it's a story about that. When I asked the producer to find out the link to Asia or China or Japan, if they found some link to Japan, maybe we can offer them the bigger budget, because I can tell my boss that we ask them to add parts only for NHK, then I can add a budget for them. If not, the budget can be smaller, only for war documentary. But if we can find a link to Asia or Japan, it's good for Japanese audience, so I can add the budget for them. So that's what I will do from now on.
Okay, good. The situation you're describing is very similar to the situation that I've run across, and everybody here, I'm sure, has run across when working with broadcasters in other European countries than our own, or with North American countries. I can always get more money out of France if there is French content or a French link in the program than if there is not. So there's nothing unusual about that. That seems to be standard for all broadcasters. So too with the notion of what you're describing is really reversioning the programs by adding an element that is not in the original program because it's not necessary. That element is not necessary for the original, the native audience of the country where the program was produced, but is necessary to explain to people from outside. And you mentioned specifically this happening in observational documentaries, and having to just explain or put narration in, not let the pictures tell the story, because the audience doesn't understand the pictures. My frequent complaint when I work in Korea, for example, is they cut so quickly that a Westerner doesn't know even where to look on the frame to see what the center, where the eye should be focusing. I had a situation where it was a program about computer addiction, and the three addicts, one was a typical school student who went off to play computer games rather than go to school. One was a married couple who had met by playing role-playing games, and one was a grandma who was actually a great warrior on role-playing games. And they were each in different parts of the country. And I explained to the editor that I needed some sort of visual device to let the audience know where we were, because location was important. And he put in a less than a second frame that was just a flash of a profile of a city. And a Korean person immediately knew this was Busan, and this was Seoul, and this was, I don't remember the name of the third place. And in 1 second, I couldn't even recognize that I was looking at a city, let alone that it was a specific city. And then tried to convince him we just needed to, great, turn it into a visual device. But let's linger on the shot. And by linger, I meant, 2 seconds or 3 seconds, not long time. And eventually I convinced him to do it that way, and he said this film would never play in Korea because it's too slow and too boring, because just giving the audience time to look at a picture was not necessary in Korea, but was absolutely necessary for everywhere else in the world. So doing that kind of reversioning, again, it's not unique to NHK or to Japanese broadcasting. My experience is it works everywhere, which gives me a good way to get to Shuhui for a bit of an introduction, because like Ken-ichi's world documentary strand, you have a strand that also takes documentaries from around the world, and I assume that you reversion them, but I actually say I don't know. So why don't you tell us who you are and tell us a little bit about what you do?
My name is Wei Chen, and Wei means 10 flowers. And you can call me either Shirley or 10 flowers. It's really great to be here. This is my first time sitting in a chapel, and I really felt great. I'm representing LIC. A little bit introduction of myself. I came to the UK to further my study back in 1997. So on and off, I've been staying in UK, England for 7.5 years, so it's great to be back. My working experience, I had experience working for the BBC Chinese service in London, and then back in Asia, I worked for the CCTV for about 2 years, and then Phoenix TV. So interestingly, I have experiencing very different kinds of broadcasting systems. And in 2006, I joined LIC as a totally brand new kind of a private sector. So I moved from national broadcasters to a private sector, and I found it extremely exciting and interesting because, private sectors give you lots of flexibility to make things happen rather than wasting sometimes time and energy, struggling in a mechanism. Well, and then LIC. LIC is a media group based in Beijing, and next year we will be celebrating our 20 years anniversary. LIC started as the agent representing ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation's documentary, tried to sell them to the CCTV. And that was back in 1993. And now LIC has a TV production company, a TV distribution company, an advertising company, and a publishing company. And we are just about to set up a new media company. So all in all now is quite a big media group, but we focus very much in documentary, non-fiction programming. And also the very special thing about LIC is that we do TV network syndication as well. So maybe I need to explain a little more on this because China is a different market. Currently, all TV channels are state-owned. So the regulation goes like this. Neither independent production company, private media force or foreign media force are not allowed to run channels in China, but they can run time slots. And the regulation currently is that maximum 2 hours in one channel. So like Discovery and Nat Geo, and they have their time slots in China, but they cannot run channels in China. So so LIC, actually, we are doing the same kind of thing, but we created in the past, up to 15 years, we created an even bigger TV network syndication. So currently, we have 5 time slots across hundreds of channels. 3 of them broadcast documentaries. So the first one is, we call it a blue chip documentary time slots. It's called Saga, S-A-G-A. It's been running in China for 11 years, and next year would be 12 years. For this time slot, is a daily running 1 commercial hour documentary time slot, broadcasting just international documentaries. So we don't care whether the content is related to China or whether it is produced by Chinese filming crew. It's all Western or international documentaries. And the second time slot is called Fabulous Nature. So as the name tells it, is wildlife programming. It's a half an hour daily running. And the third one is called Battlefield. It's studio-based. Half is studio talk shows, and the other half is documentary clips. So it's very much about military, warfare, weapons, that sort of thing. So basically, for all those 3 documentary time slots, we acquire more than 500 hours per year from all around the world. So it was until recently we had a different strategy in co-production as well. So not only we acquire documentaries for our time slots, and we began very recently, try to co-produce documentaries for our time slot and also try to distribute worldwide. And that is why we have Stephen with us. He's with us to try to really expand the business or the scope of co-production. And finally, just a little bit of the contents that I'm looking for from each market. First of all, we're looking for finished product with a large volume, as I've mentioned, more than 500 hours. And the genres that we are looking for basically is history, culture, science and technology, and of course, wildlife programs and warfare, those kind of things that can fit into our time slots.
In vernacular here, it's specialist factual.
Yes.
Is primarily what you're looking for.
Yes, yeah. We are also expanding. For instance, because of the rating pressures, so we always try to find the hook that we can give to our audience for them to tune in and watch our time slots. So currently, we expand to look after for current affairs documentaries as well. Those things that follow the news so closely. And we try to schedule those current affair documentaries, according to those different anniversaries, that sort of thing.
So this year, for example, it would have been great if someone brought to you a project about, this is the 40th anniversary of Nixon's visit to China, and he met Mao in whatever it was, 1972. So we want a documentary on that to see what a foreign perspective on that event was, or something? Yeah.
Like last year, we acquired a bunch of documentaries, the Nicholas Sarkozy and Obama, because, this year is a great season of presidency. So we try to give our audience the inside story. Like we acquired Kate and Princess Kate and William, Prince William, because of the kind of royal things. I really found, Chinese people are the bunch of people that is very open-minded, probably because information is sometimes blocked in China. So they are really willing to know the outside world. It's a good way to show them that how different, how diverse the world is, how different, how diverse the value is, gradually from those documentaries that we put it in our time slots. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, did I interrupt your flow by asking the question? Or is
No, that's okay. Probably later on I can share some examples.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just dawned on me that we're taking it for granted that you understand the broadcasting universe in Asia, and it's not quite the same as in Europe, so maybe I should take just a minute or two to explain. In China, there are 4,000 channels. Every channel is owned by the state. There are no private broadcasters in China. There are national state channels, and they're called CCTV, China Central Television, and there are 18 of them, 19, 17,
Yeah.
I don't know. There are a lot of them.
Yeah, and they also have like the Spanish channel, Spanish language, French language,
English.
Yeah,
Yeah.
English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Japanese.
No Japanese.
Yet, okay. So, and those reach theoretically everyone in the country. Then the country is divided into 30-odd provinces, and each of the provinces have their own broadcasting. And there are
34 provinces.
and 9 channels in each province. on
Yeah, I think
average?
so. Yeah, and one of each province will definitely have one satellite channel, which has the national coverage.
Yeah. So there's the province, and remember, when we're talking provinces in China, we're talking big area. So the second largest province in China is Henan.
Henan,
About-
1 billion population.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, sorry.
100 million.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
It's very difficult to move numbers back and forth
Yeah.
between Chinese and English because it's not a full decimal system. And so after 10,000, things get confusing. But
Yes.
anyhow, the population of Henan province is 100 million people, which is more than Germany, which is the largest European country. And Henan has 9 channels, of which the 9th channel is a satellite channel, which is basically the pick of the best from the other 8 channels. And it goes out all across the country. So someone who speaks Hunanese dialect but happens to be working in Shanghai has a taste of home. I think that's why it's there. And I think possibly the other reason is because people in Shanghai are always curious about what's going on in Henan because it's got a reputation for being the Wild West of China and kind of lawless, and they do things differently there. So I'm exaggerating, but anyhow. So then you have provincial broadcasters, and then there's a tier under that are, we would call municipal broadcasters, but the definition is slightly peculiar because a municipality like Beijing or Tianjin or Wuhan or Chongqing or Shanghai or Guangzhou has a footprint of about 30 million each. So these are bigger than the actual city. They're almost like provinces. And they also have the same range of having, Beijing television has, again, I'm making it up, but 9 channels, 8
Yeah.
channels? I mean, it's
9.
Too many channels for me to figure out what's going on in each of the channels. Each channel has its own identity. So there will be a...
Like BBC One, BBC 5 is, I always say BBC. Sorry, BTV.
Beijing television.
Beijing television. BTV 5 is sports. Like BTV 3 is science and education. They always have one specific identification. And probably we talk about those channels that only do documentaries.
Yes, that's exactly what
Yeah.
I was going to get to. Interestingly, about 2 years ago in China, the government changed its stand on what belongs on television, and there's been increasing pressure that reached a peak in I guess October of last year. The people who make the decisions, and remember, everything's state controlled. These are state broadcasters. there was too much light entertainment and garbage on during primetime television, and the government said, no, this is not good for the country. Get rid of some of the light entertainment and put on more serious programming. And they said specifically drama and documentary. And documentary was singled out for expansion in the country. Now, I'm sorry, my time sequence is slightly wrong. They singled out documentary expansion 2 years ago, but it's come to a head now. But 2 years ago, Shanghai Media Group, which is kind of like the Guardian Media Group, I don't know how to describe it, except being owned by the state rather than by, I don't know who owns the Guardian. Appropriate, because Manchester is the home of the Guardian, but a different story. They opened up specialist documentary channels. They announced it, the first I heard about it, it was Asian Side of the Doc 2 years ago. And these were going to be 24-hour channels. The first one was Shanghai. Beijing Television now has a documentary channel. CCTV has a documentary channel, in addition to a different channel, which is an education channel. And if you want to go off on a tangent, we can talk about the difference between what constitutes a documentary film in Asia and what constitutes a documentary film in the West. That's a tangent. But they're now documentary channels, and they want to increase the range of programming that they show the public. And so the main documentary channels have actually put aside hours for foreign documentaries. They put aside time slots specifically for foreign documentaries. And obviously the big question for everyone in this room is, do they co-produce? And on paper they say yes, but it's not happening. And the reason it's not happening, in my opinion, is because they lack the structures. They just don't know how to co-produce. So at the moment, everything is still acquisition. But that will change, and I think it will change because of people like Ken-ichi and the fact that they've done co-production broadcaster to broadcaster level in the past. And therefore, they are beginning to create structures that will allow co-production in a broadcaster and independent producer scenario. And the money that is available is significant. It's very big money by Chinese terms. It's kind of normal for European co-production. You can certainly get 50,000 to 80,000 US dollars. So I don't know what that is in euros. 40,000 to 68,000 euros or something. Or do I have it backwards? No, that's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. It's there, but the problem for people like us, for independent producers in the room, is you can't get to these guys because there's no hierarchy, there's no chain of command, there's nobody in the organization who speaks your language. Unless you speak Chinese, you can't get to them. Unless you have built a relationship with them, and it takes years to build relationships, you just can't move through the system. The decisions are not made according to commercial reality, in my opinion. The decisions on what to produce are made for other reasons, and they may include political, but I think more often than not, it's just the default position in China, and Shihui will correct me if I'm wrong, mm-hmm. but I think the default position in China is work with someone you know rather than work with someone who is good. Is that fair?
I agree with you, to be honest, because just now you've mentioned the structure reasons, cultural reasons, and here in China we have a special concept called guanxi, means personal relationship issues. That's something really works. I may give you one example. Like the France Chef China thing that we co-produced.
You have to explain what it is.
Okay. France Chef China is a formatted cooking reality show that we picked up from last year's MIP. It's a small Belgian company who created such a format and produced like 1 or 2 episodes in the West. But then I bet because of budget issue or because of the broadcasting issue, he tried to approach bigger markets such as China. So after like 3 months negotiation and discussion, we decided to co-produce France Chef China specifically for the Chinese markets and this time not really targeting the international markets. So the show is to bring the top Michelin chef in France to China to compete with top chefs in Beijing. So it's a very, very interesting show. We managed to put it on CCTV2, and end of this month, this show will be on CCTV2 from 6:30 to 7:30. Is a 1-hour show.
Can I jump in just to say,
Yes.
it's not a light entertainment show.
No.
It's an educational program, because basically what's revealed, nobody cares how the cooks cook, but what is revealed is attitudes toward food, attitudes toward ingredients and
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm sorry, so don't just think of just a cooking competition. It's slightly different than that in how it will be perceived by the Chinese public.
Yeah.
There's never been a competitive program like this on Chinese television, but it's not the competition that's the important part.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is that, Chinese people are they like foreigners. They trust foreigners' capability of delivering high production quality value, But also, they are really, sometimes they really don't know how to control. So they would like certain kind of, whether I put it the right name or not, like middleman. A company with reputation in China that they can trace their backgrounds. They can trace, they have license to produce things in China. They have license to distribute things in China. And it happens that LIC has all this kind of license that is required by the government. So we get straight to the CCTV2, and they make a really, really quick decision. It's like a green pass, like within 2 weeks, and they decided, yes, okay, we have a time slot for you, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and again, what you're hearing is exactly what the situation is and has always been in Europe. If I want to co-produce in France, I'm working for a British company, I cannot get money out of France. Even if Arte likes the program, or even if France 5 likes the program or something, it's very difficult as me as an Englishman in England trying to get that money. But if I think the program will work for a French audience, if I think there's French content in it, or if I think there's some reason why a French audience would like it, then I talk to a co-producer like Jean-Jacques over there, and I say, look, we have a program here. Does this work for your audience? And if it works for your audience, then you talk to the broadcaster, because they trust you, because you have the right guanxi. You have the right connections, because they know you, they trust you, they know if they give you the money will go on screen. Whereas if they give me in England, or if they give Shuhui in China the money, they have no control. They don't know the money will go on screen. They don't know what will happen next. It's a leap in the dark. And I think like all broadcasters in Asia are conservative. They don't take risks.
Exactly. But, as everybody knows, and also Steve mentions, that China is changing so rapidly. And in TV industry as well, because of the intensive competition, say we have 34 satellite channels, and we have those CCTV, so many channels, so really competing content, and they really look for good content. So I'm thinking, yes, taking the architect as an example, you can see all kinds of weird architects in China. It's all designed by the Westerners, but it is all in China, big cities. I think probably for TV people, we can use China as a huge market and to do experiments. So as long as you have good ideas, good concepts, I think LIC would like to put in develop money, and also we have the capability to attract sponsorship in China and to create shows and to test it first in the Chinese market and then try to travel it worldwide.
Yeah. Can I say that I have no idea how many channels a typical urban dweller in China receives on their television. I know on my television, in the place I'm living, I have about 100 channels. But I don't know if I'm typical or atypical, because I do have some foreign channels. I have the French International Channel. I have BBC Worldwide. I have a couple other channels that I don't think Chinese people probably have access to.
No.
But when I surf through the channels, from a foreigner's point of view, and this may be a racist statement, I don't know. I don't think so. I think this is me as a television person rather than a cultural comment. But when I surf through the channels, there are only 2 or 3 genres of programming on Chinese channels. There are talk shows, and maybe it's young people talking or old people talking, but there are people sitting around in the studios talking. There are light entertainment shows, which are singing and dancing and magicians and more singing and dancing, including the PLA has a channel. The People's Liberation Army has a channel.
Singing and dancing.
It's light entertainment with people in uniform singing and dancing. And you have these generals in general uniforms with the epaulets and all the medals and Elvis Presley haircuts. It's a wonderful I love looking at it. But I have no idea what they're singing about or whether they're patriotic songs. But you have lots of light entertainment, you have lots of talk shows, and you have lots of drama. Yeah. And so you'll have a 104-episode series about the Long March. You'll have historical costume drama about the Qing Dynasty and the Ming Dynasty and probably all the dynasties, but I don't know. Or you'll have a 55-episode series about Genghis Khan or something. But it's those 3 genres. And within minutes of my walking into the office when I got to China, I was away for 6 weeks and I came back and went back to China 2 weeks ago. Within minutes, people were saying, had I seen something called A Bite of China? And I said, no, never heard of it. And everybody was talking about it. And everyone was talking about it at the Shanghai Television Festival, which I've just come from. And the proof, again, I walked into a session like this, bigger audience perhaps, but walked into a session like this. And even though I don't speak Chinese, I could hear that they were talking about A Bite of China. If we look, it's a food program. It's about what Chinese people eat. And it's remarkable, and everyone was talking about it, and it was covering the internet because there are no official ratings in China. There's no Nielsen. It's hard to measure whether a program is successful or not, or how successful it is, except by whether it's creating a buzz. Every single person I talked to asked me about A Bite of China. What is A Bite of China? Describe it, please.
Yeah. A Bite of China, called 舌尖上的中国, the literal translation is China on your tongue. So it's about food. It's a food program. It's a series of 7 episodes. The structure is very much like Wild China, which is a co-pro between BBC and CCTV during the Olympic times. So I was kidding with Steve that CCTV really learned quite a lot from this co-pro. The structure is very character-driven and story-driven, but sometimes I'm joking, probably because of the food safety issue. In this documentary, it provides such a fantasy world of, the wild ingredients that you can pick up, fresh ingredients, and those wonderful foods that in our memory, Chinese memory, so it's getting really, really popular.
It's basically people and food.
Yeah.
And it's a 7 by 50-minute series. And the point is that in our countries, in England or in France or in Germany, this is a bog standard program. We've been making programs or series like this for decades. In China, this was the first time a multi-camera shoot where just normal people talking. Normally when people are interviewed in China, it is the heads of the organizations. It's not the people who pick the mushrooms. It's the guy who owns the mushroom packing concession or whatever. Totally different programming. And I think the point is that there is a growing awareness that filmmakers can controls maybe the wrong word, but influence the direction of future documentary. And that is radical in China, where before you could film, you used to have to turn in a script and get it approved before you ever got the camera out of the box. Now, No. There are other ways to make films, and the system is gradually beginning to accommodate them. But I'd like to come back to Ken-ichi, because we described the broadcasting environment in China, but I'm sure the audience doesn't know the broadcasting environment in Japan. We've got an NHK, which is the state broadcaster, and it is a multi-channel broadcaster, and each channel has an identity. Are there other channels in China? Because, for example, in Japan. In China, there are no commercial channels. What about Japan?
In NHK, we have 4 channels, 2 in terrestrial, 2 in satellite. And as for the terrestrial channel, we mainly do not acquire or co-produce foreign documentary, because in NHK, we have 3,000 directors and producers. So we need slots for them. And for satellite channel, BS1 is for new sports, news, and documentary. So world documentary is BS1. It's mainly for current affairs and social issues. And another one is BS Premier channel. It's for culture, entertainment, and wildlife or science. And but now the channel controller is trying very hard to grab the female audience. So if it's good for female audience, you have chance for BS Premier channel. And we have many channels in Japan, but basically the private broadcaster, there's no nationwide private broadcaster because of the law. Each private broadcaster is local. But of course they have the network, but they are all network. But they do not acquire or co-produce. But there are more and more satellite channels trying to acquire the foreign documentaries, because they are beginning. They are studying that it is much cheaper than to make program from the beginning to acquire the program. So 3 years ago, I have no competitors in Japan. But now, sometimes we try to get good documentary. We have to compete other broadcaster. Of course, distributor will not tell me the name, but we can easily guess it's a BS channel, especially Wow Wow, WOWOW. It's they have 3 channels. It's the biggest pay TV, and they have the budget. They do not air many documentary, but they have the budgets. So
can you give us a bit more information about Wow Wow?
Well,
is it like HBO, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they air the Spanish football league, and they air many movies. They air many live show, so they are for entertainment. Sometimes they do produce drama for themselves, so they have the budget. And they do not produce documentary, but they do acquire very good documentary. Maybe the president, the CEO of Wow Wow is from NHK. So they know how to deal with documentaries. So Wow Wow has a budget.
And then what about channels like TV Asahi or Fuji Television?
Okay.
Are you saying those are commercial networks, not national broadcasting?
No, but of course they have the network
So
around
the-
the world,
so
but
they-
they are mainly all the private broadcasts are local.
Right.
And TV Fuji has the slot for documentary, but it's only for Japanese filmmakers. But BS Asahi has a slot of BBC. They air BBC documentary in BS Asahi. So do other satellite private channels has a short form documentaries.
And when they air foreign documentaries, do they reversion them? Do they subtitle them, or do they dub them?
Basically, I think subtitle. And in my channel, we select, when we dub it, sometimes cinema verite style is good for subtitles, so we choose which is best for Japanese audience. But as for satellite channel, other satellite channels, they do not have much budget, so I think they like to do subtitle because it's much cheaper. Yeah.
Okay.
And when we produce very good, very expensive Japanese version, other satellite channel will acquire, we air our version. Of course, after we finish air, they will try to get same one from the distributor, and they will buy the Japanese version from NHK.
When NHK subtitles or reversions a program, do you give the reversioned program rights back to the original producer? I mean, I try to get that all the time. I'm not always successful.
That's negotiable with LIC. We had some examples that they ask for the Chinese version.
Yes, I mean, we recently did a co-production with the BBC. I'm sorry, it's not a co-production. We did a reversion. BBC reversioned one of our programs that we produced in China. But then we got the rights to their reversion. But that doesn't always happen. So I was specifically curious about whether that happens in Japan. If NHK goes to the expense of dubbing or subtitling a program, do you give that version back to the original filmmaker?
No. Of course, the original copyright has the distributor or the filmmaker has. But we do have the Japanese version. But there's no copyright in Japanese version. But translators and the voice actor has right. But we, NHK, do not have anything. But we have the tape. So we get something from the...
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Okay. You've been very quiet. Before I go to Kenny Bay, the Invisible Man. Are there questions from the audience? And can you give this young lady a microphone? Because I'm deaf. I don't hear her very well. It's over here.
Yeah, thanks for the mic. My voice is not very loud anyway. So I was just wondering if there were any restrictions on content, things that are taboo or things that are of particular interest to Asia. Because, I mean, just talking to colleagues, print journalists, I keep hearing these rumors, and I don't know whether they're true, that certain subjects not to be touched, otherwise you get deported or whatever. I don't know whether any of that is true.
Yeah. There's enormous censorship in China, and you quickly learn what you can and can't say. You may have the world's greatest documentary about Mao's illegitimate children, and it may be absolutely true, and you have great interviews with them and everything else. I can't get that program on Chinese television. It will never play there. It's probably better for Shuhui to answer than for me to answer.
Sure.
But
we'll compare the answers.
I would say that it's a very thin line in China and possibly in other Asian countries. My experience is not good enough. The line between history and ideology is much more blurred in China than it is in the West. And so, for example, I've seen wonderful footage in a Chinese archive of a battle between the Chinese and the Russians that took place in 1957 or 58 or something, about a disputed island in the middle of the Amur River. Wonderful, wonderful footage. And this is a war that is unknown outside of, I assume, Russia and China. I'd never heard of it before, and I know, I read a lot of history. Never heard of it. And I wanted to make a program just using this footage. And they said, no, you can't. And I said, why not? And they said, oh, that's not history, that's ideology. And so I was literally denied the footage. So
So is that something that you will then deal with when you're reversioning in case there's a small problem or something that could be misunderstood, or could that be a reason for turning down the whole story? But if it could be, it'd be good to know how to deal with it, or whether there could be a dialogue before,
we are learning every day because of the, we need to follow the government's ideology, I would say. But basically, for a lot of TV practitioners, we have certain kind of taboos. And I would say it's like 3T, 1F, 1D. So 3T, Tibet, Taiwan, and Tiananmen. And the F is Falun Gong, and D is Dalai Lama, I would say. So those are the taboos.
What was the last one?
Dalai Lama.
Oh, Dalai
Tibet.
Lama. Got it. Yeah.
Dalai Lama. But is that the person,
No, wait. Also, you can't do anything that's mildly sexy. It's a very prudish
exactly.
society. You can't do anything on homosexuality. You can't do anything.
Well, it's changing. Like homosexual, transitional sex. It's something that you can do on internet. We have a huge internet video channels, and I think I gave you one link the other day. I just amazed to find there is a series about transsexual people in China, and it's elderly people. It's amazing, and it's very open and very. That is why I said we are learning every day, because China is changing, and the censorship, I think, is changing as well. So
okay, I buy that, and whatever is true today will not be true tomorrow.
I have an example about the censorship. Yeah. My colleague went to Guangzhou Film Festival and found a good project about the pollution in China. Area was polluted by some factory, something, okay? But Shanghai Media Group took that because it's a social problem about pollution. I was wondering why is SMC can air that kind of social documentary. But the filmmaker will not blame anyone. They will just depict the fact. So it's okay for Shanghai Media Group. So if you deal with something, you have to think about how is the ending. So I think China is changing. They can air the social problem documentary.
Yeah. I mean, we just don't have time to go into details about the difference in broadcasting. In the West, we are used to programs that have multiple points of view and leave it to the viewer to decide what is right and what is wrong. That style of filmmaking is not yet known in China. There is only one point of view. The Chinese, in film terms, are not used to having multiple points of view. But it will change, just like A Taste of China changed the way they presented. It's a stylistic thing about how you deal with food. It was as simple as that.
And probably, Steve, we can mention about the project that we did, LIC did, the Death Row one, the Dead Men Talking. The BBC This World broadcasted on the 12th of March? 10th of March. And they changed the title into a Chinese talk show, Interview Before Execution. So it sounds like such a controversial topic, and people always ask us, are you okay to make such a documentary? But it's the way that how you tell the story. As Ken-ichi just now mentioned, you just put facts in the story and, leave the audience to really give their own interpretation of the so-called, the justice system in China. But we didn't really go into details about how the system works in China. We focus very much on the character and on the story.
And then the subtext is the system, which the audience sucks out of the program, and we got away with it. But you're constantly pushing the boundaries. Did we answer your question? Okay, is that okay?
A film that I recently saw, which very much addresses this kind of strategy, is Beijing Besieged by Waste. I don't know if you've seen that or if that is played widely in China. I believe when I saw it, it was distributed by Degenerate Films. I don't know if you know that.
What's the title again?
Beijing Besieged by Waste, about illegal dumping around the city of Beijing.
Okay.
And I think the Chinese filmmaker released it in gallery settings in China, but it ended up having quite an impact, I think, on at an official level in terms of policy changes around cleaning up some of this illegal dumping. But anyway, it's a film that very much is a case study of exactly what you're describing. But my question is for Shu Wei about your revenue streams. I'm wondering for the 1-hour time slots, is your company then responsible also for finding advertising to support the programming that you decide upon? Is that?
Okay. I think I've mentioned a little bit previously. I think LIC is good at not only production, but because we have an advertising company, so we've established a network of clients who followed us for our saga time slots. So we will be able to attract sponsorship in China, like the France Chef China. We managed to get the sponsorship. We call it title sponsorship. The show is proudly brought by which company. And also, we try to we create the very Chinese way of sponsor, which is internal branding.
Yeah, wait. We have to go back to basics here. Even on the state broadcaster CCTV, there are commercials.
Yes.
Although it's not a commercial broadcaster, there are commercials. Commercials are only at the beginning and the end of the program. They do not break the program in the middle. We can get sponsorship for a slot that is going to be showing a particular program because the sponsors want to have their commercials at the beginning and the end of the program. And then within the program, there is brand identity. So, for example, the chef can be wearing a hat that has a logo on it or something. And that's quite legitimate in China. And that's where the Chinese are very good about raising money for programs from outside the broadcast sector. The same thing that we are learning in Europe about the broadcasters just can't afford to make the programs anymore, so where else do we look for money? And when the Chinese discover crowdfunding, that's the end of television as we know it. They're not quite there yet, but they'll get there. But in China, money will come from outside organizations. Shuhui's talking about commercial sponsors, but you can also have institutional sponsors like museums that have budgets to put into television. The question is how to locate these other sources of funds. And at the moment, you have to be Chinese. And that's why LIC is. And
they prefer to work with companies, organizations, rather than with individuals, as far as I know. Yeah.
Okay. Can we move on to another question real quick? Then there's one over here, and after that one, I want to get to Korea. So we'll do these two questions and then move back. Yeah.
Hello. I think more and more filmmakers, particularly outside of Asia, want to make films about Asia. So, lots of European filmmakers make films about other international issues, and then likewise, lots of other non-Asian filmmakers want to go to China or Japan and make films about that. Several years ago, Sean McAllister made a film with NHK, about Japan. So I wonder whether there's a market for that, like films by foreigners about China or Japan, or if so, whether those films can be placed in your, for example, NHK's domestic slots.
You mean about Asia?
About Japan.
What I'm not picking up is, are you talking about programs about Japan made by Westerners or foreigners from a foreign point of view?
That's right.
Okay. With regard to China, my experience is the Chinese are actually not interested in foreign points of view about China. Whether not only Western points of view, but other Asian points of view. It's still too young of a market and a culture, I think, to be interested in what other people think of us. And so I don't think we get airtime in China. You're laughing at me. You disagree? Okay.
Okay, because we have another documentary time slot that is called Saga China. we are trying to build up the kind of habits of viewing China from an outsider. And in the past, 3 years, we acquired several documentaries from outside China.
And how did they do?
I think it did well.
Okay.
So that is why
Okay,
I'm
so it's
laughing.
changing. Okay. And then what about Japan? Are Japanese audiences interested in other people's opinions about
It's much
Japan?
different of China because China, in Chinese character, Chu Goku, it means the center of the world. So Chinese people do not care how foreigners see China. No, but we do care. So, if in the documentary about China, about Japan, if we can find a unique way, unique angle to see Japan, which we do not have, it's okay.
Okay. Wait. I'm sorry. There's a gentleman over here.
I have two quick questions about NHK documentary. The first one is last summer I had a chat with Li Junhu, a documentary filmmaker in China, and he told me that he has opportunity to cooperate with NHK, but the way is he has to give up the editing opportunity. That means that he just handing all the footage he shot probably 2 years, and then opportunity to edit to give to NHK. So my question is this so common? Is it a common way for NHK to cooperate with other independent filmmakers? This is the first question. The second one is I just...
Wait. Let's do one at a time.
You mean that the NHK got all the footage?
Yes, NHK buy all the footage of independent filmmaker and edit by...
It depends on the contract. I do not do this because I love to work with filmmaker. I do not love the footage. No, I love to work filmmaker. I do not do that. But
So
maybe it depends on the contract or contents.
Or the project, because it seems to me that there's more than one way to engage a broadcaster, and so it really depends on what the negotiation and what each party thought they were getting out of the deal. You don't have to sell finished programs. You can co-produce. You can do pre-buys. There are all sorts of intermediate ways of working with Asian broadcasters or with NHK. And I do know of cases, and I have to say I've done it in other circumstances, where I've bought a film simply because I wanted the footage in it. I didn't want the point of view of the film. And some filmmakers are aware that this happens, and they just say that you can't change the film, and other people aren't aware. And okay, I bought it basically as an archive source. So okay. So there are many different ways. I don't think we can generalize to just one way of working with it.
In general, public broadcaster in East Asia, producers think that we are superior to filmmakers. So especially in Korea, when they give the money, they will take everything. Yeah. So that's the problem.
Yeah. And you had a follow-up question?
Yes, another question is about, I just heard there's a very mature and professional documentary pitch launched by NHK and KBS and another Singapore group. So I think it's not quite usual in Asia, but it's quite common in Europe and North America. So could you say something about that? Is it called the Asian
Asian Pitch. It's project by NHK, KBS, and Media Corp in Singapore. It's a pitching session. And now my colleagues selected 12 projects. We have the 100 submissions all over Asia, and we select 12, and we invite them to go to Singapore. And we have the pitching session, and we select 3 projects, and they will finish it in 1 year. So it's a pitching session, but closed pitch session, and the 3 out of 12 can make documentary in 1 year. So budget is not huge, but for the emerging filmmaker, it's a good project because in the pitching session in all the world, there is no guarantee that they will select some. But in Asian Pitch, we do select 3. So the next deadline is next April, and maybe next year Taiwanese broadcaster Wei Chen.
Yeah. I should say that pitching forums are now coming of age in Asia. The Asian one we talked about, but there's also, you've originated one yourself with Tokyo Television. CNEX in Taiwan does something called CCDF, and that's a pitching forum. In the past, the pitching forums self-define themselves, just like there's the Nordic pitch in Scandinavia, and it's for projects coming out of Scandinavia, maybe, I don't know. I've never been to it. I assume that's what they are. The Taiwanese one is for programs on Chinese content, but it doesn't matter whether it's mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, or overseas Chinese. So I was at one that was pitched by people from Chinese, ethnic Chinese, but living in the United States. So there are increasing number of these pitching forums, and they will increasingly open up. Crossing Borders, which is a training initiative that's run in part by Documentary Campus and part by EDN, also does pitching in Asia. So there are a bunch of these coming on. I know there's a question here, and I want to stop for a minute if I can. Let's hear from Korea, just because Korea is an emerging documentary market. And we have a presentation from Kenny Bay, who is, like Ken-ichi did at Japan, and he was the one who kick-started international co-production in NHK. Kenny is the one who's pushing the state broadcaster in Korea. It's called KBS. And I have to say, I don't know what's on the tape because I was in China and it was the Great Firewall of China blocked it. I couldn't see it until I've arrived here. So you want to run the tape, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Kenny Bae. I'm Director of International Relations Department at KBS Korea. And I would like to apologize that I'm unable to join you in person. However, I'm very happy to share with you in this way. And Stephen, thank you for having me and bothering me in this way in the busiest time of the year. Allow me to introduce my company, KBS. KBS is a representative public broadcaster in South Korea. And we run 3 television channels, 2 are terrestrial, and the other one is an international satellite channel called KBS World. We have 4 documentary slots, and the documentaries are very important genre at KBS as public broadcaster. Especially the one called World Docu is slots for you. You may heard people in this industry say that working with Koreans are difficult. It may be true, and it may be false. We have to admit to ourselves and to the rest of the industry that international cooperation with Europe and other parts of the world has not evolved as quickly as we would like. It's still elusive. In these terms, Steve, you're right. However, at KBS, we are starting to see great progress, at least in regional co-production. Actually, we're closely work with Japan and China in terms of co-production. And I will share some of the exciting programs in a moment. But first, I think it's important to explain the reasons why co-production in Korea has been so difficult. In Asia, most broadcasters have a strong precedent focusing on in-house production. Most priority is given to in-house production. It's the same to other broadcasters in Korea, and I believe it's also true to CCTV and NHK Japan. And we still see the effects of this in-house production system that as we try to shift toward taking part in more international co-productions. And I have to explain that our internal procedure for co-production is quite complicated. And at KBS, we don't have commission editor's job in the traditional sense. And all the matters with the co-production is related to documentary department and program department, as well as the international department where I work. However, you may regard international relations department where I work as a window to approach KBS. We have been working mostly with Japan and China in terms of co-production. NHK has made a lot of progress and has been a strong player in terms of co-production in Asia. And now the Chinese have often documentary channel. It's the same for KBS. We are also keen, like the NHK and the CCTV. We broadcast as many documentaries in weekly slots, especially dedicated to that genre, and growing number of these foreign produced. As I explained before, World Documentary is just for documentaries produced in foreign countries. For us, networking is very, very important. We have been working together with our neighboring parties with a good trust. We all recognize NHK's sincerity and high quality production. So we can pre-buy with them and we can invest in their programs. Now we would like to enhance and extend with European partners. Now I would like to introduce about Superfish, which is our big project to target international audiences. Superfish has received a great response. We'll have involvement from our long-standing partner NHK, and the series has already been sold to CCTV China. But we have reached out to broadcasters well outside that region and have received encouraging feedback from PBS United States and ABC Australia. Superfish is shaping up to be one of our most important international documentary co-production. We are trying to work with European partners, but to work with Koreans, if you already have a major broadcast channel like BBC or France Television or out there, it's easier to bring KBS on board. It's good tip to work with Koreans. And as for genre, we don't really stick to certain genre as long as it's innovative and high quality production. And the relevance to Korean audience is very, very important. As we co-produce with the European partners, we need the European perspective, but it must attract a Korean audience, or it's something that KBS cannot cover. Of course, we can send KBS production staff all over the world, but if you have some programs that we can't cover, that would be good for us. And for example, if you have access to North Korea, which is something we don't have, that's good reason for us to involve. As I've said before, most of the programs co-produced by KBS with the neighboring countries like China and Japan. Until now, we have not made a big effort to seek international co-production with other parts of the world. Henceforth, our policy is changing, and KBS now has the desire to work with new partners, notably European ones. Therefore, please do not hesitate to contact me. You may reach me through my email, kenny@kbs.co.kr. Well, thank you very much for having me here. Especially, I would like to express my great appreciation to Stephen.
Okay. We are officially out of time, but the organizers here, who some of them know me very well, know I'm always over time, have graciously given us a little bit more time. So if there are questions, we can continue taking questions for another 10 minutes. And specifically, if you have questions about Korea, I've actually worked a lot in Korea as well, so I can explain there's not only KBS, but there's also EBS, Education Broadcasting System, which is also a company to work with. Particularly producers, I think, would like working with them because they don't know how to co-produce. And so they ended up, we just did a straight swap. They'd give me anything I wanted, and I gave them the finished film, which was great. So I got all my archive out of Korea for free and gave them a copy of the film. And anyhow, so I can talk a little bit about Korea if you would like. If you have other things to go to, don't feel you have to stick around. The time is over, so thank you very much, but we'll take questions after that. So thank you. There's a question here.
Yeah, I wanted to know whether Chinese are interested in a Chinese perspective of the outside world, because that might be something interesting. I mean, would the Chinese audience be interested in seeing how someone from China sees other parts of the world?
Okay. That really depends which country, I think. But all in all, because I've been living in the Western world for some time, and basically I feel I'm very much Chinese. I really, really think, compared with Westerners, Chinese people is really open-minded. They are eager to follow the outside world, you know. And also, I think technology really changes quite a lot. Although there's a lot of information being blocked in China, but like I'm here with my mobile and I have the Weibo. Weibo is the Chinese way of Twitter. You may know that Twitter has been blocked, but you don't know that we actually have our own Weibo. And on this Chinese Twitter, information is free and flows so quickly that I try to imagine it's like bubbles, you know. Of course, the governments try to block certain kind of information, but now because of the technology, bubbles are coming anywhere, so at least they know something from the Twitter. So I would say Chinese people, all in all, they're eager, they're keen to learn, to get in touch with the outside world. And yes?
But I'll speak as a Westerner working in China. My perception is the Chinese are more interested in China because there's so much about their own country they don't know. We're talking not only about a quarter of the world's population, we're talking about the third largest physical country in the world. And I think that's significant. I think that the Chinese viewer, if they have a choice between watching a program about a Chinese subject and a program about a Western subject, I think the default mode is they go to Chinese subjects.
I think that's certainly, like for British people, they definitely will stay tuned to see the Parliament's arguments rather than, learning about the Chinese government's recent mission to which country. Yeah. I think that's pretty sure. What I'm comparing is, say, a British guy's willingness to learn outside world and a Chinese people's willingness to learn outside world. And definitely Chinese is much more eager. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Bye. Oh, wait, there's one over here.
In a related subject, was the showing of the Ai Weiwei film anything to do with the fact that your colleague from CCTV wasn't able to attend today? And what do we read from that?
What's the question?
What do we read from that? Was it anything to do with the showing of the Ai Weiwei film at this festival?
Look, I'm unable to tell what we read into it. There are so many levels to the issue, and I'm actually not politically astute, and I've never worked in news and current affairs, so I don't know how to analyze this sort of thing. I said earlier that I think a lot of broadcasting decisions in China are made for non-broadcast reasons, non-commercial reasons. They will show things that they know have no audience because they think they should show them. I was amazed when we were working together on this program we mentioned about the death row people, that the ethos of the broadcaster, the guy was talking to me about why he was putting on the program, and it was the Reithian ethos. He said, look, television is here to inform the public, educate the public, and only third level do we entertain them. And I'm thinking, gosh, is this guy spouting propaganda or does he believe it? And the more I talked with him, the more I realized this is not propaganda. This is what he believes. But the Chinese do things differently. The system it does not work rationally according to our rationality. So I'm horrified to discover the program that you and I worked on was a history of Beijing that was supposed to be delivered before the Beijing Olympics, which are exactly 4 years ago. We were making a cut-down version of a 12-hour series to a 3-hour series for BBC Worldwide. I delivered the cut-down version on time, hopefully on budget, but I don't know. But
you did.
Delivered it on time, and it went out before the Olympics. The Chinese completed their 12-hour series. It has still not been shown. I do not understand why it has not been shown. And then when I queried it, I said, what's going on? Did you make an enemy somewhere? And the man who was in charge of it is quite high up in then it was BTV, Beijing Television. Now he's reached retirement age, so he's big outside of BTV. And it was revealed to me that in China they commission 100% more programs than they have slots for. And so there are hundreds of series that have been made to high standard, nothing wrong with them, as far as I can tell, nothing wrong with them, that never see the light of day. Now we could not do that in the West. We don't have the resources to do that. I do not understand the mechanism of how that happens in China. So that, they're doing things and they're evaluating things according to criteria I do not understand. There is an organization called SARF, State Administration for Radio, Film, and Television, that we would call censors, but they're not censors. They are, but they have other functions as well. SARF, someone somewhere thinks that talking about Ai Weiwei, even if we talk about him purely in terms of his art, is wrong. Because Ai Weiwei is a criminal or Ai Weiwei is something else in China, and we don't put criminals on television. I think that's what's going on, or it may be what's going on. So again, Shihui and I have a colleague whose wife is actually best friends with Ai Weiwei's wife. And I said, why don't we do a program, Ai Weiwei, or a series, Ai Weiwei on contemporary Chinese art, where we absolutely no political discussion whatsoever, and we won't even look at his art. But he's actually, he lived a long time in New York. He speaks pretty good English. He's got interesting views about modern art. And why don't we actually just use him as a presenter? Forget all the politics stuff. And I was told in words of one syllable, you can't forget the politics stuff. And we have the ability perhaps to separate. But in China, for reasons I don't understand, it's an all or nothing game. And so if I want to do a program with Ai Weiwei and looking at modern art, or looking at Tang Dynasty, I don't care. Anything that he's interested in, I would be interested in. It's explained to me, I've not met him, it's explained to me that he actually doesn't like talking politics, he'd much rather talk about art. And I was saying, well, let's give him the opportunity to talk about art. I don't care about his politics. Other people can deal with the politics. And I was told, no, you just cannot do that. It cannot be separated. But I don't know why. And it may just, I don't know. I don't know. I'm amazed that they walked out of participation and walked out of the being on the panels. But I don't know whether they were instructed to walk out or whether people are just protecting their asses. I just don't know. There's nothing official in the Chinese press about it.
Okay, I'm one of the Chinese delegates, but I didn't receive any notice of not, notice me not to come to this market or festival. So what I will do, because I have no evidence, I haven't got the chance to really dig out what is the story really happened. So I have no comments so far. So probably when I get back to China, and I'll be able to know more of the behind-the-screen story. But currently, I told something very interesting. In the hotel, Mikuri Hotel, there's a big group of dentists coming to Sheffield for a meeting too, and I happened to met one guy continuously in the lift. And this morning, we met in the lift again. He dragged me out to say, "What happened to your Chinese delegates?" I begin to realize it's a big story, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. But anyway, my personal involvement in this, because I'm one of the Chinese delegates, no notice to me so far, so I have no comments. Yeah. When I get back to China...
They do things differently.
Yeah, I think Steve is right. Although he's been spending quite a long time working in the same building as I am in, he always say, "I just can't follow your Chinese logic. What is your logic?" And I've tried all my best to explain the logic, and still he says, "I just can't get it." Okay.
So anyhow.
But anyway, can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
Yeah, when I was on the airplane, I watched The Iron Lady, the very British movie. I really love it. And there's one sentence I remembered, and I fully think is right. She said something in the parliament that no more just talking, take action, let's do it and make things happen. So that's my belief. We are in China. We don't talk too much. We just take action and do it and try to present more documentaries to Chinese audience. Yeah. Okay,
good. We have to end. Ken-ichi has another thing to go to. Shihui and I are happy if people just want to come up and talk. But we're going to end the session now, and thank you very much.
Thank you.